Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Rita Mies, Project Manager of SEEBLOCKS, and I'm very happy to welcome you to a new webinar series. This time is entitled Ensuring Consumer Data Protections Through Blockchain and DLT Standardization. So as you may have realized, we're organizing a series of webinars all related to blockchain topics. And as well as on the last webinar today, we have some of the selected experts that are part of the SEEBLOCKS family, let's say, and they are supporting the standardization efforts within blockchain by bringing European view into these international standards. But before we start, we go straight to business. I'd like to share with you some housekeeping rules. So firstly, this, as you may have realized, this webinar is being recorded, and the webinar recording and the presentations will be available to you within the webinar page within the next 24 hours. And there are 2 points for you during this webinar. So we have a questions and answers chat where we encourage you to write any questions you may have to our speakers. So write the questions down there and we may reply to you, our experts, by writing there or using their own voice if time allows to reply to your question during the webinar after their presentations. Another point is there is a chat box where we invite you to follow, where we'll provide some useful information there at the pertinent time, and you can also write messages if you would like to which are the questions. But going forward about who we will have today. So today we will have 3 of the SEEBLOCKS experts that mentioned. We'll start with Julian Bringer from Calistech. Then we'll go straight to Sonia Datter from Digital Touch. And we'll close with Christian Grafnauer from Dean Verbolschrat. And all of them will be SEEBLOCKS experts. But before we give the floor to Julian, just a couple of words about SEEBLOCKS, what we aim to do. So this is a project funded by the European Union, and the main goal is to ensure that European needs, values are included within standardization efforts of blockchain. And how do we do this? So first of all, we recruited 40 experts. Our goal was to recruit 40 experts who should be involved in the standardization efforts. And from these experts, we recruited 3 of them are here with us today. The other line of action is support standardization documents from the standardization bodies, but also to the ICT Rolling Plan, which is published by the European Commission from time to time. Another important aspect is that we developed the standards visualization tool. So you can go there and to find any materials related to blockchain standardization. But also, if you are aware of a material, a presentation, a PDF, a video, whatsoever, and you believe it should be listed there, you can propose these materials to us. Okay, so that's the part we don't just want to present what is all out there. We are also open to enrich this tool with the materials you may be aware of. To close, we are also delivering a landscaping gap analysis report where we understand what are the main needs in Europe regarding blockchain standardization, and the inputs on this report will be included on the European Union Rolling Plan of Standardization. Later on, which is not listed here, next year, we plan to launch a training course on blockchain. And as soon as we have more information, we'll let you know. Just follow our newsletter and our website, and we'll be timely informed about that. Just to provide an overview from the experts we selected. So the experts, they are working within SEEBLOCKS. They come from around Europe. Their work is having an impact on different standardization bodies, namely ISO, CENELEC, IEEE, and ITU. They address several main blockchain areas, as you can see on this graphic on the right side. So we are quite happy to have this family with us. We got a total of 84 applications and 33 were funded. So good job on this. This is the visualization tool. So we'll share the link on the chat, but it will be also on the PowerPoint where you can access materials and propose your own materials. And one last point before we give the floor to the first speaker is that so on SEEBLOCKS, we are also want to demonstrate how blockchain and DLT can support Europe in different business sectors. So we have a call for use cases where we aim to demonstrate how blockchain can be useful within several sectors. So we don't have any blockchain use case published yet. We are going to publish them soon. But if you are aware of one, you are involved, or some of colleagues, feel free to submit them in our link. And with this, I think we can give the floor to our first speaker, which is Julian, and we can start. You know, you are here to follow them. Let's open the floor to that. Julian, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. And hello, everyone. I will share my screen just to show a few slides. On my side, I'm involved in standardization since now about 11, 12, or 13 years, depends how you count it. My background is on security, cryptography, and in particular with a focus on bringing privacy-enhancing technologies to mainstream applications. And I started to be involved in blockchain now in blockchain standards in particular about 7 years ago. And I'm now, in fact, since 2018, I'm a co-convener of one working group within ISO technical committee on blockchain standardization. So this is what I'm going to present, to give an overview of what's happening there, in order to provide some insight and probably to raise some questions. And the idea is really to show that we are trying to grow in terms of maturity around privacy protection, security protection, and it's related also to identity management topic, although I will not enter too much into the identity topics here. So where are the main places for those activities? The main one, and I will explain further what it is for those not aware of it, is the ISO, so International Committee, International Standard Development Organization, Technical Committee 307. But it's also related to collaboration with other international committees, also with other regional standard organizations. There is a CENELEC at European level, Joint Technical Committee 19, which is also working on blockchain standards. In France, being a French expert, I'm also involved in the MiCA committee on blockchain and DLT, and also working a lot interacting with, interfacing with different organizations, different stakeholders, with respect to European Commission, for instance, with respect to various governments in different countries, in particular in France, but also with different organizations, associations like INADBA, like Begin worldwide, in order to identify, to support the stakeholders, about the missing, the needed standards, what should be improved, etc., and how also to be sure that we bring experts within those standard organizations to work on developing those documents. A very brief overview, and this will be available in the slides, so no need, and it's anyway public information, so no need to go too deep into the details. Very brief overview of TC307. So this is a blockchain and distributed ledger technology standard development technical committee in ISO. Well, obviously, it's about developing standards in those areas. It's under the Australian Secretariat, which means that in particular we have a chair coming from Australia, and it has been launched officially with the first meeting, and now more than 7 years ago. And you have to keep in mind that in ISO world, a standard takes about 3 years to be developed. So this is now that we start to see different documents available and future ones upcoming. There are 12 standards, well, 12 documents available, 11 documents under development right now. It's quite well attended, more than 60 countries are following either actively or observing what's happening there. There are various working groups, and in particular, what is interesting to emphasize is that there are now 3 joint working groups. What we call joint working groups is in fact a working group within this committee, Technical Committee 307, together with some other ISO committees. So for instance, joint working group 4 is with SC27. I will explain a bit further. There is also a joint working group with TC46 and another one which has been created very recently with TC68 about digital currencies. And TC07 is also working through what we call liaison mechanisms with many other committees or standard development organization or other organization. I already mentioned European Commission in ADBA, but there are a few others. And it's very important because this is the way we ensure we take into account all the needs and also that we avoid conflict between different documents, different standards developed through different means across different organizations. So the goal of ISO is really to be sure that we have something which is internationally recognized and that can be used at the end by the different stakeholders. A very short reminder of what has been published so far in TC07, and this is a list of published documents. There are technical reports, technical specification, and really what is in general considered as the main outcome of those committees is international standards. There are also a few international standards, and the more we grow in terms of maturity and also representativeness of the different experts participating to those kind of committees, the more you see international standards in general. At the beginning, it was more technical report and technical specification. Highlighted in bold, some related to privacy aspect or security aspects. And for instance, something that was really key to start our process on developing future standard was agreeing on a vocabulary. So ISO 22739, which has been revised recently. It's really about being sure that when we what we call, for instance, a node is really understood the same way by the different experts, and then we can leverage this understanding in the other standards. Now, joint working group 4, as I said, it's a joint working group. It's on security, privacy, and identity, and it's a joint working group that has been established within ISO, and it's common between, in fact, TC07 and SC27, and C27 being about information security, cybersecurity, and privacy protection, and it's well known for 27000 series, and particularly 2701, which is widely used in information security world. But also there is an important working group there in SC27, which is dedicated to identity management and privacy protection. And this is where, well, the reason why we have those 3 topics together within joint working group 4. So it does focus on those 3 topics, and we have 2 co-conveners, myself and Franco Macaro. What is important to have in terms of information there with respect to the scope of this webinar is that there are various ongoing works today for developing future international standards. One is about privacy capabilities. So the exact title is the one you can see here: requirements and guidance for improving, preserving, and assessing the privacy capability. It's not about well, defining, listing all what needs to be done. It's really about what needs to be done compared to classical legacy systems, what we know today in terms of privacy controls. It's not necessarily applicable to DLT blockchain system. And so there is a need for an international standard, developing, detailing what needs to be done in addition to what is usually done. So it's about taking care of a specific aspect on governance of the systems, on the way you can update some information, on the way you can manage, and need to be careful on the way you protect personal data. Another one, which is not directly related to privacy, but it's still about data protection in a way. It's about information security controls. So it's a new project as well, 25126. It's based on 27002, which is about security controls for general systems. And this one is about listing the additional security controls that are needed within the scope of distributed ledger services. Another one, which is in between privacy aspects and DLT identity management. It's about privacy protection when we involve trust encores. So trust encores are those encores that we use in the DLT system in order to get some specific information, some attributes, in order to use them and to leverage those information within a DLT system. When we do this, how to have something which is privacy by design, this is the scope of this project. And a few other ones, very quickly, around decentralized identity. Why I mentioned this one? Because when we manage identity, of course, we want also to preserve privacy of the data subjects. Another one is about secure smart contracts. Why I mentioned this one? It's also because when we use smart contracts to take, for instance, autonomous decision on the way to share data, and it's kind of related to Data Act, for instance, in Europe. We want also those smart contracts to be secure in order to be sure that they will stick to what has been defined in terms of specification in terms of behavior of the smart contracts. A few other topics, we are collaborating with other working groups, in particular within TC7. There is working 5 working on the editing guidelines. That's a way also to ensure that at the end we can assess that everything has been implemented and handled as expected to achieve the security and privacy controls and privacy requirements as expected. And we are collaborating with various other groups, already mentioned SC27 on privacy and identity management, for instance, with some other working on digital wallets today, with GTC 19, etc. And just to finish, I wanted to mention some topics on which I think they are under development or still to be addressed, on which additional contributions will be welcome. There are many discussions today in European Union around digital identity, with the digital identity wallets in particular, and privacy preserving aspects are going to be very important in that space. There is a lot related to smart contracts, but what is not yet fully addressed in terms of standards is, for instance, how to govern to maintain and to manage DAOs properly in order to be sure that privacy is handled from end to end, for instance. Cybersecurity information sharing is to be sure that once deployed, protocols, DAOs, etc., security is still well managed, even if it's fully decentralized. And just for the sake of opening a topic that might be useful to investigate in the future, when we talk about AI, we heard a lot about Gen AI, for instance, how to be sure that we have something that at some point is fully under the control of the end users. So maybe we need something around fully decentralized governance for Gen AI for general public, where we'll be able to be sure that it's ethically it's well managed, privacy is well taken in account, etc. You probably see what I mean compared to some of the offerings that we have on Gen AI today. That's it. I'm happy to take questions now or later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Julian, for this quick but very informative presentation. At the moment, I don't believe we have questions on the question and chat and no hands raised. So I'll just give an additional minute for people to write them down if they wish to. When I was following your presentation, Julian, I was thinking there was the earlier slide on, I think it was one of the last ones, saying activities that are still work in progress, I was wondering, you had a list there. I was wondering, in your opinion, what would be the most urgent one to be addressed? You have the AI and other topics. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, probably the most urgent one is in Europe, driven by the European Commission requirements around European Digital Identity Initiative. I mean, there is There are many requests in terms of standards for the European standardization bodies with respect to this initiative. And I think in terms of consumer protection, being sure that we take in account properly privacy requirements and we really help end users to have their own privacy and personal data protection taken into account properly is very important. And I think it makes a perfect link with what Christian will probably discuss at the end of this webinar. So.
Okay. Thank you, Julian. I just saw we have two questions from our attendees. One is from Dimitar Koyosev, where he asks, could you share a little bit more info for the ISO PWI 24875?
So 24875, which is titled Secure Smart Contracts, it's a preliminary work item today, so it's not yet at the stage of developing a future standard, but we are discussing which kind of standards are needed and how to be organized. And we are really at the, let's say, at the final phases of those discussions. So we expect to launch, to initiate new documents very soon. It's really about what needs to be taken in account compared to classical software development lifecycle and maintenance, auditing aspects of those kind of things with respect to the security of software. What is really needed in respect to smart contract, what is specific in the smart contract design, in smart contract maintenance. So this is those kind of aspects that we are discussing and for which we expect at some point to start, well, and as I said, rather soon than later, to start initiating documents.
Thank you, Julian. Before I go to the next question, Reja, I just would like to share with you. So this question came from Dimitar Koyasev. So Dimitar Koyasev was one of the authors who attended the SEEBLOCKS workshop in Japan. He submitted a paper, was presented there. There is an interview. So for those who are interested, Dimitar, thank you for joining the webinar for your question. We'll share the links for Dimitar's the interview we did there, just for those who want to follow a little bit more of Dimitar's work within SEEBLOCKS as well. Thank you, Dimitar, for your question. And before we go to Soumya, one last question from Reja, where he writes, I would like to know ISO TC 307 duration to receive report from people. Do you know inputs on this, Julian?
So to know about TC307 duration to receive report from people, I'm not sure to get the question right. So maybe if you want to add something, Raja, either in writing or if we have the time by speaking.
Let's put it like this, Julian. So Raja, we will go to the next speaker, Soumya. Feel free to write a question at the end, we'll may address.
Okay.
But thank you, Julian. But before we go to Soumya, which already ready here, I just would like to highlight that Julian is also part of the StandICT project, and this webinar is organized in cooperation with StandICT, and we'd like to also thank StandICT Friends, which is also a project focused on standardization efforts, not focused only on blockchain, but generically. So we'd like to just thank Julian for also being here on behalf of StandICT and for StandICT to support the organization of this webinar. Thank you very much. And
thanks to both organizations for their support, of course.
A pleasure. It's a pleasure. I think now we can go to Soumya. Soumya, are you ready to shine?
Yes, absolutely. Always. Let me share my screen with everyone. Entire screen, yes. Share. And
Presentation mode. And that's it. Thank you.
okay. Yeah. So, hi everyone. My name is Soumya. I'm CEO and Standardization Manager at FeatureTouch. It's a SME operating from Estonia, and we have another office in south of France. And today I'm very happy to talk to you about my SEEBLOCKS project on secure and interoperable tracing for digital product passport. So before I go into the work, which was mainly centered around gaps analysis around interoperability and recommendations for software development organizations, I thought I'll just quickly discuss or give a short introduction to what is a digital passport. We are all familiar with human passports when we are traveling in and out of Europe and all that. So a digital passport, when comparing with the physical passport, it's more of a representation or a digital representation of product's life cycle. So from the point it is produced until it is meeting its end of life. And this is part of the European Union's eco-design for sustainable product regulation. So it's actually becoming quite popular, and there are companies which have created a digital product passport platform, and everybody, for example, you see the picture from Circularize on the right-hand side. So all these platforms are using different sorts of data to capture product life cycles. It could be starting from production data, then any technical documentation. So for example, when you buy a washing machine or TVs, you get the guidelines to assemble everything. For example, from IKEA and all these things, right? Similar things when material composition, how to reuse and recycle. So I think this is one of the crucial things for which I really like digital product passports. Then authenticity guarantee, because fake products are a huge reality. It's like billion-dollar business across the world. Professional compliance, return and repair information. So right to repair has become like one of the laws in many European countries, and then chain of custody. So all this kind of data and a little bit more are part of the product passport. And you see, one of the main aim for this is to create the transparency in the product value chain. And blockchain has been chosen as a fundamental building block because, first of all, it's highly secure and it provides immutability. So the data that has been written into the product passport cannot be changed. And we have decentralized data. So blockchain sort of becomes like a foundational technology for enabling digital product passports. And that is kind of like our first point of discussion, or first point of entry towards this presentation. So what I'm going to discuss quickly is challenges in interoperability. And the challenge comes because, as you can see from this picture, so we have to write so much different types of data. And these are heterogeneous data coming from different parts of the supply chain, OEMs, consumers, and whatnot. And different platform has a way of managing things differently. And when we are talking about different products, so you can think about batteries of electric vehicles, or it could simply be a washing machine that has a product passport, and things like that. So when we are going deep into one vertical industry, everything changes, data governance, data structure, formatting, and all that. So that was one of the main goals for me to study in this work. And once I completed that, the next step was to create recommendations for the scientific organizations. And finally, I will give some conclusions of my work as well. So I identified 6 interoperability gaps during the project, and my target SDO was W3C. Now, one thing to consider here is that similar studies on interoperability do exist at this point. But what I discovered during my project is that all those work were very much industrial sector specific. So if somebody was investigating digital product passport for batteries of EV, so they basically went very deep into one particular industry, but the cross-industrial sector or like cross-sector perspective was something that is missing. And I'm a software developer, so for me, to extract maximum value from a platform, I always try to figure out how can we ensure that some parts of the platform or the entire platform can be used not only for just one industry, but in like multiple industries. So that opens up like more revenue channels and more concrete impacts of the company into the actual market. So I performed the interoperability gap from that holistic or like cross-sector perspective. I have kept my presentation at a fairly high level, but I will point you to additional documentation and a research paper that where I summarized all my findings so that you can read about all these things in more detail. So the first one is, of course, what I was saying. So data standards and formats is definitely where we notice a lot of incompatibility. For example, if you see like GS1 barcodes and there are some other similar ones. For example, Circularize has smart question protocol, and when you compare with GS1, so we do not see like a unique standard or like a minimum data standard and format that people are using in this kind of platforms. So the main solution here is that what I suggested is we can take two routes. One, either we develop a standard or format translator. So we can, so if you take A, B, C, D, E, so from A to B, A to C, A to D, things like that. But that also gets a little bit of complicated when you see like a plethora of platforms operating in the European market. So another way, which is much long-term vision to be supported, is that if we can create a harmonized universal standard data format, it might not be able to address all use cases, but if the standard can suggest some minimum interoperability criteria for data standards or formats, that would still do the job to bridge this gap. Then the second one was in terms of data security and privacy. So for data security privacy, the main problem was, or not was, rather is, how to balance transparency and privacy while still complying with privacy laws. So I cited GDPR, but there are additional industrial privacy laws are in place, not only at the European level, but as well as in the national level as well. And there are some techniques like selective sharing mechanisms, which are in place in some platforms, but they are not universally interoperable. So this is where things go a bit tricky. So one of the recommendations that I put forward is to establish like standardized security protocols with very advanced encryption and access control. So this is the access control part is something that we are emphasizing. Like when a consumer is accessing the user product passport, they should be able to see certain things. And when supply chain company is accessing the product passport, they may not be able to see complete same thing, but maybe a different kind of things. It remains to be seen once again, like how we can fashion this access control part. So while we balance transparency and privacy with complying with the privacy laws that we have. Then moving forward, we could see data governance. This is particularly tricky, and there are some projects that are already working on it. Blockchain, one of the first things about using blockchain is immutability. So the data that you are writing complicates its update and correction. So imagine when I was coding certain things, if there is a typo and without any checks and stuff, it goes into the system. Right now, if it is not on a blockchain, I should be able to come back and correct it. But this is a clear, it can become like a liability if blockchain is involved. So, for example, the battery passport is one of the success stories of DPP, and it also lacks a clear mechanism for like multi-stakeholder update. Even, I mean, it's a problem for a single user to come and update data. So when you imagine in a multi-stakeholder scenario, so getting that update is kind of actually a software nightmare. One of the main solutions that some people are working on here is to introduce flexible frameworks for governance that can support both accountability as well as compliance in a very holistic perspective. Then in terms of certification, right now, like what I was saying before, most of the certifications that we have, even though they are in a very nascent stage, they are very sector specific. So in case of battery passports, it is kind of like focusing on the EV battery sector. And we do not have like a universal model that can be cross-sector certification. So there are also some initiatives going on to create cross-sector certification standards for DPP compliance, mainly looking into the data that would be stored, how the traceability aspects will work, things like that. Then scalability and performance. Here, this is a little bit on the software side as well, but still a remarkable challenge to solve is when we are talking about building decentralized systems and building on such decentralized blockchain, it can sometimes limit the real-time traceability. And the number of nodes, if you have quite a lot of nodes, then getting consensus and many other things would actually take time, further preventing real-time traceability and scalability. So, for example, there is a lack of standardized layer 2 solutions for high throughput that is like available at like a mainstream blockchain solution. So in this case, the main thing is we need to work on such scalable frameworks to be sidechains and many other things. Then the last one that I worked on is access control. So it's coming back to the first second part, second key gap that I was talking about. We do not have fine-grained access control system, and it's a kind of like fragmented permission system that we have across platforms. And when we imagine like two different platforms, they need to work together, that also is kind of problematic right now. So we need actually universal access control defining, especially for writing information on the DPP as well as reading information from DPP. And if we are not doing this correctly, then it becomes quite problematic, because in a lot of cases where supply chain plays a very crucial role for determining the price and a lot of things. So these things are kept like super confidential at companies. So imagine like European car companies like BMW, Volkswagen, or Airbus. So they take supply chain confidentiality like with extreme level of confidentiality, security, privacy, efficiency, all these things. So if we do not have like a similar system implemented for DPP platforms, so if they expose their data through a DPP, for example, and it can fall into the hands of industrial competitors, so they might lose their competitive edge. So that's one of the reasons to look into these access control and provisions from like a very, very granular universal way. So until now, I talked about the 6 different main areas of challenges that we have come across. Although I mentioned the solutions as like one line and offered very little in my presentation because of the time limit, but I suggest all of you to go through this paper. So I mean, if I explained all those gaps and their solutions, recommendations for the SDOs in this paper. So this is already, this will be published in next week, but a summary version of it is already available in Zenodo repository. It is open access, and it's released under the Creative Commons license, so you can download and use it for your work, further extend it, cite it in your work and all that. I highly welcome you to take a look into it. And finally, in conclusion, what I would say is we have seen similar sector-specific studies for digital platforms. So in my work, I decided to explore the lack of cross-sectoral analysis. And this is from like a very, very broader adoption perspective. And as of next step, what we are thinking internally in my company in Digitech is to create a reference architecture that will integrate all these points that I was talking about. So standards, governance, execution, scalability, like a single interoperable ecosystem. So it kind of is like a utopia for DPP platforms from like an interoperability, security, tracing perspective. And you want to create a reference architecture and see, I mean, create guidelines on some minimum interoperability mechanisms or similar mechanisms in terms of interoperability, so that people or like software developers can refer to the reference architecture and say, okay, out of the 200 or 100 recommendations, we take the 15 or 20 recommendations, and then we are like we are like matching the minimum interoperability mechanism that we have with the reference architecture, so it can like create a cross-sectoral DPP for the European market or the market realm. So that's the main goal. And with that, I say thank you to all of you for listening to the presentation. And if you have any question, I'll be very happy to take it and try to answer.
Thank you, Simeon, for your presentation. For the benefit, I don't see any questions or hands raised, but for the benefit of time, I will jump directly into Christian. And then at the end, we'll see if there are questions for you, Somin, also for Christian. But anyway, I remind the audience you can write on the chat, the question and answers area, and Somin will reply directly to you during Christian's presentation. Christian, it's your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rita. Thank you very much, Soumya and Julia, for the interesting presentations. I want to present a little bit today about an initiative about GDPR and blockchain. So particularly the title is Guidelines on Processing PII Using Blockchain and Distributed Ledger Technology. So a little bit to myself, my name is Christian Grafenauer. I'm an expert in CEN JDC 21, so AI standardization with regards to the AI Act on behalf of ANNEX, so as a consumer representative, and in JDC 19 and ISO TC 307, which are the European and the international blockchain consortium. So the background story for my project is that it's a project funded through SEEBLOCKS.eu as a long-term project. And it's addressing the emerging need for standardized privacy practices in blockchain and distributed ledger technology, particularly with a special focus on GDPR. So the project aims to harmonize disparate efforts from ISO. ISO already has a pretty good setup and collection of privacy protection, security standards, but those standards are more tailored to an international audience. And what my particular project that I've started in SEN is trying to achieve is basically make a gap analysis and fill the gaps to the standards and things that have to be considered when we're looking at privacy and data protection from a GDPR perspective. So the project aims to introduce consumer-centric guidelines, foster a unified, secure, and transparent approach, and has a particular focus on privacy through the lens of the GDPR. Besides all the international standards that Julian mentioned in his presentation at the beginning of the meeting, I want to point out that there has been an initiative in Germany on the DIN-SPEC 4997, which was a standard on a standardized model for processing personal data using blockchain technology. That standard has been published and is on the market. This is now aimed to be raised to a European level. I'm going a bit more and where we stand on that project in the later slides. The goals of this project are to provide guidelines for PII identification. So basically that we know when we process data with blockchain or DLT, is this considered personal data or is it not when we look at it through the lens of the GDPR? We want to provide a mapping of GDPR principles to technical measures. There's also the goal to provide architectural blueprints and design patterns that are in line with privacy by design. We want to give an overview of technical and organizational measures that are well suited to be used with blockchain technology to comply with the GDPR. We want to provide risk mitigation and privacy preservation information, and also compliance procedures. So how can I demonstrate and achieve compliance through mostly through documentation, but also through other things. The content of the DIN-SPEC that is at this point mostly motivating and are basically giving the core idea of what this new standard is supposed to be like. It has a section on personal data, explaining what personal data is under the GDPR and how this needs to be interpreted in a blockchain and DLT context. It talks about GDPR awareness, so specific caveats of the GDPR that become particularly relevant when we deal with blockchain and DLT technology in contrast to traditional technologies. It gives an overview of principles of data protection and their risk from the perspective of privacy by design. There is a general section, fundamental principles and assessing the risk of processing personal data. And then we have a section on mitigating the risk and processing and decreasing identifiability through technical measures. Also a general section, technical measures, categories of technical measures for data protection, and techniques to improve data protection or mitigate risk of data processing. The DIN-SPEC 4997 also has an extensive collection of annexes. One is on recommendations for handling personal data with blockchain application, which is normative. So this annex has to be followed if someone wants to comply with the DIN-SPEC 4997. The same goes for GDPR awareness, which basically gives an overview over 22 legal issues covered in Annex B. So at this point, I also want to point out that we had an unusually high density of legal experts when we were writing the DIN-SPEC 4997. And this is also why we have a quite substantial analysis of legal issues that arise with blockchain standardization. there is a normative Annex C with a questionnaire where you can basically extent of the implementation of data protection principles in DLT and particular solutions. So this can be used to kind of get a first good overview. Where do I stand in terms of GDPR compliance with my blockchain solution? There's an informative annex on a summary of applicable risk assessment methodologies. And there is an informative annex on additional information on technical measures. The status quo of the project, that basically to take the content of the DIN spec 4997, raise it to a European level, and also harmonize it with the international standards to the degree possible, and then use this document to close the gap. So the working group where this item will be produced, like JTC 19 Working Group 3, personal identifiable information in blockchain and DLT, is currently being created. And I have been elected as working group convener as well as project leader. So the project start is currently being delayed. It was scheduled to start at the beginning of November, but with the creation of the working group still being pending in the SEN Secretariat, we kind of have to wait for the working group to be officially founded so meetings can be announced, and then we can start with the work. The further milestones would be a dispatch of the first working draft in stage 2016 on the 28th of February next year. Then the dispatch for inquiry is planned on the 27th of June in 2025, and the dispatch of the final version draft of stage 4599 is scheduled for the 18th of August in 2026. If you want to contribute, if you want to get involved with this initiative, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or contact me via my email, grafenauer@protectivecircle.com. If you want to get in touch with me, a little bit of Googling when you have my name should definitely help you to get in touch with me. And this is it for my presentation. I tried to keep it short so we maybe have a little bit of time for questions. So with that, back to you, Rita.
Yeah, thank you, Christian, for the your presentation. I don't see any questions either for you and Sonia on the chat, neither hands raised. So maybe I will step in. We want so focus on Christian part. So it seems that this is quite a long progress, and only around summer 2026 that we'll have the first draft of this final version that should be published, right? So it's a process that takes time. So in 1 year and a half is when this will be finalized, and then later on to be adopted as an official document, correct?
Yeah, so once it goes through the inquiry stage, there will basically be a consultation. All the national bodies and the experts in the committee and also in the national bodies will have time to comment on the standard and give their opinion. And then basically the expert group under my leadership will try their best to kind of address all those comments so we can find consensus amongst all the European national bodies so that they positively vote. And when this final vote is positive, then it will go through an editorial process that SEN has to manage, which usually can take also a couple of months up to half a year. This is the first European standard that I'm doing. So maybe Julia, with a bit of longer experience, knows a bit better how long this will take until the kind of final standard will be published, but I expect sometime early 2027. If there are no further delays, then we have a final European norm on this. If companies want to do something today with regards to GDPR compliance, they can still refer to the DIN spec 4997, which is probably not as high of a credibility threshold as a European norm, but it's something to start with. And I would say if you start with the DIN spec 4997, you probably already have covered a lot of ground for the stuff and recommendations that will be presented in the European norm.
Okay, thank you, Christian, for this. And I think we have a couple of minutes, so no further questions to you and to Soumya. About Soumya, which I believe still be with us, about your presentation on the digital passports, being in the European Union. So one thing that came across my mind was, so this is a very important normative in work to kind of uniformize, the border control and so on within Europe. But how, in your opinion, but Europe is not an isolated island, it's kind of with countries from other continents. So in your view, what will be the main challenges or struggles or opportunities between this initiative in Europe compared to other borders around the globe?
Well, I think if you think from a consumer perspective, the advantage or the value is that you will have a more understanding of the product you're buying. So for example, right now, we don't really know what to do when we decide not to use it anymore. Right. We have no clue about how to recycle it or where to take it for the recycling or whatever. So that would be like one of the first things that would be beneficial. But when we have the cross-border imports, so imagine from Japan or from New Zealand or from Mercosur countries, when things are being imported, they will have the challenge to comply with DPP regulation, and that can actually open new opportunities for business for European SMEs, because the companies or the platforms who have a DPP right now on the market, so they would be the ones in assisting these companies to create a EU compliant product passport for their products. So there are definitely challenges, but the challenges come opportunities. So I think that's the right way to see look for.
Thank you, Soumya. And once, okay, so before we close this webinar, there is a question from Amanda, and Christian already kindly offered himself to reply. So the question from Amanda is, has this project been presented in European Committee CEN CLC GTC 19? Once it has been European standard, is it possible to transform it into an international standard?
Yeah, so the project has been presented to Central like GTC 19 and sometime around this year in April. Then it took a while. It went to ballot, I believe, mid this year, which took a couple of months. And then basically the project got approved. So we're currently in the process of creating the working group, which is on the table of the CEN Secretariat. And once the working group has been created, I can start scheduling the first meeting. Once it is a European standard, it would be theoretically possible to make it an international standard, but I'm currently not sure if this is if this would be very meaningful, since ISO usually likes their standards to not be tailored to any particular regional legislation. Whereas with this standard, we want to have a particular focus on GDPR. I rather believe that we will try to aim and use international standard as the base layer to kind of refer to international standard, to the best practices, and then put a couple of sections on top of that where we say, well, based on the base level of those international standards, this is where we have to raise the bar to kind of meet the requirements of the GDPR. So the European standard can rather be used as an extension module for those international standards when people are addressing the European market with their blockchain-based products. Thank you.
If I may add, Thank you, Christian. And I agree with you. It's quite likely to be this way. In particular, given that there is also an international standard under development related to privacy capabilities for DLT systems in ISO. So at the end, the European version focusing on GDPR will be developed in parallel of an international standard. So through the liaison between TCC 07 and GTC 19, we will be able to be sure that the baseline is aligned and that the assumption taken at the European level on what will be the future international standard can be referred to quite early during the development of the European standard. So I think it's all about being sure that we will discuss and collaborate all together, given that most of the experts are present on both sides. For those at least present at the European level, should happen quite smoothly.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Christian and Amanda, for your question. And Amanda appreciates the replies. So it's already 1 p.m., so it's time to close the webinar. Before, like we say farewell, just would like to announce that we just finished one webinar, but another one is just around the corner. So we have another webinar before the Christmas break from SEEBLOCKS, which we will focus on research and standardization. We will have some examples on how to improve these relationship, let's say, between research and standardization efforts. It will be organized in collaboration with the HS Booster and with Impulse project. So more details of these initiatives will be provided at the webinar. And to close, we'd like to thank you, Christian, Simon, Julian, and Tubi here. Also to thank Stand ICT for their support on organizing this webinar. And also to all of you who attended and had shown interest to listen to us. And from one more personal note, I'd like to thank the team who helped here to organize the webinar. Named my colleague Gabriela, who has been on backstage, but for example, she had an important role in preparing the presentation I shared with you all, and also ensuring the social media and everything works smooth backstage. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.